Hello there, sword friends. Today I'm going to talk about this sword right here. This is a Windlass First Knight sword. I think that's what it is. Now, it's supposed to be that. Windlass are swords that are made in India, and this being the First Knight inspired sword is supposed to look like the ones from the movies, though I don't think it does. It's a movie with Sean Connery and Richard Gere, and they're playing, I don't know, some medieval fantasy something. But in any case, this sword kind of looks inspired by, but doesn't look exactly like the sword from First Knight. In any case, that's what it's supposed to be, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. Now, one note that this is secondhand, it's been used, so you can't really hold the scratches and whatnot against Windlass or the rust, but there are some details on here that are fundamental and goofy, and I thought I would share them. There's also some positive things, so I suppose note that. In any case, I have it in hand right now, and I have to ship it off to the new owner, so I figured, well, I had it in hand, why not share it with you? So let's start like I typically do with the pommel, the base right here, and in general, it's big. It lets me get kind of some purchase on the pommel, so if I want to use two hands, it lets me do something there, but it's not super comfortable to do it. And the pommel actually showcases the dumbest possible thing, and what stands out to me as one of the worst factors about this sword, and that is this little square bit around the pommel. I bet you thought I was going to say the kind of what looks like jelly inside the cross here, but no, it's not strawberry jelly. It is some sort of resin. It's actually this square piece right here, and the reason is if I hold the grip, this square piece just digs right into my palms, and it'll cut you if you swing hard enough and fast enough, and you're choked up down on the pommel there. And no matter which way I hold it, it just feels terrible if my palm comes in contact with this square piece, because the corner is just jamming right into my palm. Now, if I choke up on the grip and hold it like this, it's still uncomfortable, but it doesn't feel like it's going to cut into me. And if you wear a glove, it's really a non-issue, at least a thicker leather type glove. But some sort of protection from your hand keeps the little square bit from jamming in you and feeling terrible. The other bits to note is that this is supposed to be like, I don't know, like a ruby or something like that, but it ends up just being some lacquered resin. It looks all right, though. I mean, honestly, it is what it is. I can't expect, diamonds and rubies and all sorts of classy inlay. I like that it's some attempt. It's just funny that the little raspberry jelly in here it's got little bubbles in it. Little things that show imperfections and stuff that, if they just painted it red, it might look a little better than this kind of clear attempt at something a little more bedazzly. If we move on to the grip, the one thing to note about the grip is that it's just not quite on center. So if you notice, it kind of cants off a little bit this way. It's just a little bit off center. Something to note if you're super anal retentive, but not necessarily a huge problem. I don't know if there's any historic reference to being off center. I know from time to time people will have the pommel kind of twisted a little bit, and it helps supposedly it rest in your hand in some way, but I don't think there's any historic reference to being off center other than just general lack of symmetry. The grip is also leather wrapped. It had some glue on it or something like that, so it's come undone, but it's held up really well over the years, and the wire kind of pokes in on either side here. It's just like drilled through or something like that, and presumably twisted up underneath. Whatever method they use, it doesn't necessarily give the same stability or overall elegance of an Albion wire wrap or something like that, but it's held together and gives a pleasant look, especially given the price point, because these things aren't terribly expensive. Windlass isn't known to be thousands of dollars. They're usually in the low hundreds. The crossguard, if we move on to this is just a big piece of rebar. For reference, this is an actual piece of rebar, and what you can see is that it's actually a little bigger than this piece of rebar. Rebar comes in different sizes, granted, but it's funny that this piece of rebar is actually smaller than the kind of hexagonal crossguard here. In any case, it's shiny, it's buffed well, and it's just really, really big. I suppose it would, if you're using this with a shield and a sword came down here, you wouldn't really have any worry about it breaking, and you could punch somebody in the face with it, I guess. I don't know, but it seems a little too hardy. The blade is typical Windlass blade, and it's shiny, and it's not of terribly great sharpness, but it is indeed shiny, something that I like about Windlass. They put a little bit more mirror polish on it. It has all the things in Windlass. It has lots of ripples in the surface all over the planes of the blade. Some general unevenness, but there are some details that I like about the blade, namely these little shoulders down here, how the blade kind of sweeps up. It's just a little detail that I find really appealing. It would have been probably much easier to grind them straight, but these kind of just little shoulders in here line up really nice. The crossguard also has a big giant hole in it that's been filled with epoxy where it meets the blade. It's not necessarily great, but again, Windlass are about the cheapest swords that you can buy, and for the cheapest swords you can buy, you can only expect so many things. If I could do anything about the crossguard, I'd actually want to make the hole in the crossguard tighter. It would be make it a little slimmer. If we move back to the blade here, there's some rust and spits and spots, but really there's not much to say. It reminds me of a Type 14 blade. I don't know exactly if it is, but that's what it reminds me of, and it feels in my hand dynamically better than the previous Windlass Type 14 that I had. Now granted, I did a review on that before the Weapon Dynamics computer was a thing, before I took those kinds of measurements, but this one doesn't feel so clubbish. I remember that sword just wanted to lurch out of my hand. It didn't feel very good, and this one actually doesn't feel bad so long as I steer clear of this square hand ripper. It actually feels really kind of pleasant in the hand. I can imagine if I had a shield, I feel like I have point control, and I feel like I could throw just a really mean chop with this sword. I'd probably want it to be sharper, but if I was attacking an opponent in armor or something like that, I suppose it wouldn't necessarily make a big difference. In any case, it feels solid and sturdy. It doesn't necessarily rattle or do anything bad, and overall it's a fun little sword. I'm a little sorry to see it go, but then again, I've always really, if I'm going to have a Type 14, I've always lusted over the Albion Sovereign, and the first Knight sword isn't necessarily something that's really struck my fancy. It's looked good on my wall while I've had it, and as sorry as I am to see it go, I hope it finds a happy home. In any case, that's really all I have. It was just a quick share. I'm not going to do any cutting or anything like that with this sword, but I thought I would share some of the properties, dynamics, and some video, so I hope you enjoyed. As always, cheers and thanks for watching.